Hi everybody, Brian from Witch Doctor. I just wanted to do a quick segment on tooling. Not every single tool on the bench, but just wanted to go over a few pertinent tools today, ones that are used quite frequently for reloading. Okay, first thing, let's go over some primer seating depth tools. Did a couple videos recently, had a lot of questions about that, so I just want to do that first and foremost, since that seems to be on a lot of people's minds nowadays. I went ahead and I actually found some primed brass. I'm not sure when I primed this or actually what primer is in here, but it's been sitting around for a long time, and I just kind of cleaned out a closet here to make some room for storage, and I found this little bag of pre-primed brass. Not sure what it goes to, didn't label it correctly, and that's a good lesson to learn, is make sure everything you have is labeled really well, because you may end up sitting on it for a long time and totally forget like I did. So anyway, so couple of different tools to measure primer seating depth. I'm not sure exactly how much I've seated these primers, but by feel, I'm guessing anywhere from 3 to 5 thousandths of an inch. Anyway, so one particular tool, the one that I've found is very effective, is the calipers. So set your calipers at 0. There should be, on most calipers that I've seen, this little back area here, and then a tiny little part of the tool there that you can just stick right into the primer and then press down, and that gives you a primer seating depth measure. So just take your piece of brass, stick that piece right on top of the primer and press down, and here you see I got 0.045. So let's take this exact same piece of brass, let's measure it again, and 0.045 again. There is another tool that I found that is a lot quicker in measuring primer pocket depth, this Holland's primer comparable primer seating gauge. Very simple and quick. You just put the little dot here on the primer, press down, and it says there about the same thing that the caliper said, about 0.045. So what I find is that both of these tools measure the exact same thing. They have the same measurements, the same reliability, the same precision. They do just as good together, just as good separately. 0.035. Let's see what old Holland says. We got, yep, 0.035. So yeah, absolutely, calipers. If all you have are calipers at the bench and you want to measure primer seating depth, these are excellent, very reliable, very precise, and very, very simple. If you do want a dedicated tool, then something like the Hollands is a great tool. It's not necessary if you have the calipers, because again, the calipers do a perfect job. There's no problem at all with calipers. But if you did want a different tool, something like this could be had. It seems like I can measure things quicker with this than with calipers. I can just quickly go, okay, look, and maybe measure things faster. But certainly the calipers do the exact same thing, just in a different way. And so there's really, I can't find, other than measuring things a little bit quicker, I can't find any advantage of things like this over calipers. But again, some of it's personal preference too. I have shooting friends that they like things like this because they like gauges with numbers like this. They don't like digital readouts, or for whatever reason their hands make it harder for them to use calipers than something like this. That's fine. Some people say it's harder for me to see the numbers on here than on this. Hey, if that's the case, go for it. Then something like this, is great for you, and go ahead and get that. But If you can't have any of that and you're able to operate calipers effectively, then they can very effectively and reliably and precisely measure primer pocket depth. I'm sorry, and primer depth too. Not just the pockets, but the actual primer depth itself. For primer pockets, again, simple. You just take the edge of this, stick it in there, and go down. 0.122. And actually, that is what Lapua says is the depth for this particular 6BR case. So you can see right there that the measurement I just took of primer pocket depth is exactly what Lapua indicates is the factory spec for this particular piece of brass. So again, this tool will measure primer pockets and primer seating depth perfectly, basically, once you know how to use it and you use it well. Other tools like this, again, these can measure it too, and I would say, you know, it's a personal preference as to whether you want something like this or to operate calipers. If you're having trouble operating your calipers and you don't feel like you're getting reliable results, then yeah, go ahead and check out, you know, something like this and see what it does for you. Maybe it is better for you in particular, but overall, calipers get the job done. All right, now on to, let's look at what's called a tube micrometer. Tube micrometers are very helpful in measuring neck thickness. There's a little ball on there on the end, and you stick a piece of brass onto that ball, and then you turn this in, and then that gives you your measure. The ball and this little flat area here kind of line up perfectly onto a cylindrical surface. So this ball micrometer is perfect for something like a rounded area, like basically measuring the round interior of a piece of brass and measuring the thickness of the neck wall. And so what you do with these is you turn them, and what you have to do is kind of practice quite a bit, because it's not easy to get used to this thing. Make sure that piece of brass is centered there on the ball. Turn it. Look at the numbers. That 0 in there, it's kind of hard to see, so I apologize, probably can't see it, but there's a 0 there, and then there's numbers. Here, let me see the 0, 1, 2, etc. So that is your first digit of your sequence of measurement numbers. So let me turn this down. So with it showing 0, that means that this is 0.0, and we're looking at inches here. So 0.0, and then your next measurement is here, the 1, 0.01. 0.01, and it's not quite to the next one there, which would be 0.011. So it has not, like that hash right there is the 0.011 hash. It has not gone past that line. So basically you have 0.010, and then you go to the final digit, which is whatever the line up here is lined up to whatever number here, which is a 7. So this tells me the thickness of the neck of this brass is 0.0107. Okay. Let's go to calipers, because some people use calipers, and see if we can put the calipers on there. So here you have 0.0105. So that last digit there with calipers is either going to be a 0 or a 5. So with calipers, you can get a fairly close measurement, but with this tube micrometer, you are going to get a very precise measurement. Okay, so it will measure very precisely down to that fourth digit, that fourth significant figure there. And that's exactly what it's doing here. It's lining up again. So this tells me it's 0.0107, whereas the calipers 0.0105. So again, you just get greater precision from this type of tube micrometer. Okay, and here we have just a standard micrometer. This one is good for measuring neck size when you have a loaded bullet into a neck. So what you do is, again, it's very similar to that last tool that we saw, where we have some numbers here on the side, up here, and on here. What we do is we take whatever we want to measure. So let's say I want to measure overall neck diameter of a loaded round. And maybe for this, what I might be doing is, or what I usually do when I do this measurement, is I'll measure a loaded round's neck diameter, which includes the brass, and subtract that from the chamber neck dimension, and then that gives me a measurement of how much clearance there is between the brass, the loaded round brass here, and the neck chamber wall. Okay, so generally people try to have that measurement from anywhere from 2/1000 to 7/1000 of an inch, and give themselves 2/1000 to 7/1000 of an inch clearance. So in order to figure out how much clearance do I have, this is the kind of tool that would help you figure that out. So we look here, this is our first digit number. So we're on the 2, we haven't gotten to the 3, so basically we have 0.2. And we're less than the 10 here, so 0.2. Oh wait, I'm sorry, we're up to, that's a quarter hash and a half a hash, so 2.5. So we're at 0.25. We have not got to 10, which would mean we'd be 0.26, so we're at 2.5, about 9, 0.259, and then we look here, wherever 2590. 0 is where it lines up perfectly. So 0.2590 is the diameter here. And this just so happens to be a type of brass and bullet that I would have in a 262 neck for my 6 ppc. So this would tell me that I have 0.003 of an inch clearance between my loaded round neck and my chamber neck wall. And I get that from this tool. Now, some people will use calipers for this measurement, and I'll show you. So you would take the calipers here, put them on your neck, and then rotate the bullet 0.2585. So I am getting a little bit of error in measurement there, down to that fourth figure, 0.2585. So this is why people do recommend that you just go ahead and use this type of micrometer over calipers for this measurement, because again, the calipers, that fourth digit is either 0 or 5, so it's imprecise. Whereas with a tool like this, it will get you definitively that last digit, and you will definitively have more precision with this tool. So it is recommended you use this tool over calipers for measuring that neck diameter. Okay, let's look at base to Ogive. Basically, base being down here at the bottom of your cartridge, and Ogive, or I call it Ogive because it's easier for me to say, but it's technically supposed to be Ogive, is where the bullet would contact the riflings of your barrel. So for that, what I do is I have this, what's called a comparator tool, where it has a insert here that is designed for a 6mm, because this is a 6mm bullet. And you put that on your calipers. Looks like we have to untwist that. And what I do is I make sure that it's square on the calipers there before I tighten it down, and then go ahead and click your origin, or on some of them it's 0. On this one I have to hold it down and it's called origin, and now it's zeroed out onto this tool. So I will open up the tool, stick the bullet in there, go ahead and close it up. Make sure that bottom part is centered on the bottom there of the calipers. And what I like to do is kind of turn it a little bit, turn it softly. I'm not pressing hard on this, I'm not turning violently, I'm just kind of very gently pressing up on here and turning it slightly. And I'm coming up with a very consistent 1.733 reading. So that would tell me that this is consistent. 1.733 is very consistent reading here. So the base to ogive measurement for this particular bullet in this particular piece of brass is 1.733. What I like to do is, if I have an extra piece of brass around, is I write down the name of the bullet, like I have here, the Diablo, Paul Porosky Diablo, and then I like to write down the measurement, 1.735. Actually, this should be 1.733. Yeah, that's very much 1.733, so that's what I will do. I may have, and here's another thing, may have used a different set of calipers when I got that 1.735 measurement. I probably used these Hornady calipers when I got the 1.735. Again, one thing to kind of highlight here is with different different brands, you get different levels of quality. You also may get inconsistent measurements. So this one may measure a little bit longer than this set of calipers. So what I recommend is you use the same calipers for all operations, or for whatever operations that you need to be consistent with. So I switched to these calipers to measure base to ogive, so I will be using these exclusively for that particular measurement. For this set of calipers, I actually use these to just measure case overall length, because it's quick and it's usually precise. So I use these only for that measurement. So I don't cross my tools. I don't use this for overall case measurement or use this for base to ogive. I have this for base to ogive and then this for overall case length. And that's how I use my tools. I do not cross them over, because again, once you cross them over, they will show different measurements. All right, let's look at Headspace. Headspace is taken usually from this bottom part of the bullet, the case head, to a datum line somewhere on the shoulder where it lines up to the chamber, basically. I'm going to show you two tools for that. One is this, again, this comparator tool, very similar to the base to ogive comparator tool. That goes on your calipers. You have to get the right size for the type of brass that you are using, and make sure that those match up. Once you put the tool on, make sure you press 0 or origin or whatnot to zero it out. You take a piece of brass, bring it into the tool. Again, kind of like the base to ogive measurement, kind of rest it right there flush on the caliper and give it a little turn. And once it's very stable, which is stable here at 1.135, that's your measurement there. Let's take another one. See what this one is. This one is 1.120. So I probably these different pieces of brasses are from different chambers. 1.1195. Okay, so there you go. That's one way of getting your headspace measurement. Another way that I actually prefer is with a Wilson case gauge micrometer. And again, like I mentioned before, you may have preferences for the types of tooling that you like based on your vision, based on your hand strength, your ability to handle small instruments, or whatever it may be. Everybody has their own unique potential for what works for them. So this just so happens to work for me really well. I like this particular setup. You just get a case gauge that has a little, it's hard to see it probably from that angle, but it basically is a chamber design, and you drop the bullet in there. What I like about this design is you can actually have a bullet loaded in it when you measure it, if you need to sort of measure it after you've loaded. And then this little micrometer here, and you throw that on top, and you just kind of hold the two together and you turn it, and then it gives you a measurement there. This one is 4 thousandths below zero, so I would call this -4, because you have a 0 right there, and it's 4 thousandths below. Each little line here is 4 thousandths. I'm sorry, each line is 1 thousandth, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4. So I would call this one -4 thousandth. This one here is 1, 2 plus 2 thousandths. Yep, these came from different chambers for sure. And this one here is, yep, -4 thousandths. So pretty easy to use, and it'll give you a good estimate to the thousandths, even you know, half a thousandths, sometimes 1/4 of a thousandths if you can see really well. So that's another simple tool for measuring headspace. I keep this tool with me at the loading bench when I'm at a match and I'm loading at the match, because it's really fast to just throw a piece of brass in there and, you know, get the number and go, okay, cool, my die is sizing correctly. I don't have to adjust it. Typically what happens though at a match, if I'm, you know, using the same brass over the period of an entire match, let's say 10 matches, so I'm firing the brass 10 times a day, 2 days in a row. I find that after about the first 3 or 4 firings, it's using this tool here, I find that my sizing die is not sizing all the way at that point, and so I have to actually crank my sizing die down throughout the day to then size for my headspace correctly. So anyway, that's why I like this tool and keep it with me on the bench, is to periodically check my headspace, make sure my sizing die is sizing correctly. Okay, and just a last tool to look over. This one may be a little unusual to you, but I certainly have used it more than a few times, and that is basically a bolt cutter. I will have bolts laying around, or we'll buy some, and they don't send them to you at the perfect length that you need. So, you know, they sell them in standard lengths, you know, 5/8, 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, whatever, and you can probably get pretty close with those, but sometimes you have really tight tolerance where you're screwing that screw into something, and it needs to be like a very precise length, or very close, or you just have, you know, a particular bolt and you don't want to go to the store to buy more. You're just figure, I'm just going to cut it down and that should work. So that actually is what happened just this weekend. My Seb Max Rest had a bolt in it that actually bent. So it was the bolt that was inside the foot here to hold this little foot in place. This foot really holds the rest down onto the bench and keeps it very steady and still. Well, that bolt inside there, you may not be able to see it, but was bent. So I had to pull it out, and I found, well, I actually have some bolts that would fit that, but when I went to screw it in, it stopped about halfway down. So it told me that, okay, there's a stop in there, and this screw is way too long. I need to cut it in half, basically. So I got my electrical tool. This is an electrical tool, actually. I don't do a whole lot of electrical stuff because I'm just kind of not really trained well in it, but I do some rudimentary electrical stuff, so I have this tool and I have used it a few times. But what's really neat about it is, since electricians often are cutting bolts, it has a built-in bolt cutter to it. So all I did was take one of my screws, screw it into here, and what you see is on the bottom side there's part of the screw that's sticking out, and then you just squeeze. Oh, let's see if I can squeeze hard enough here. There we go. And voila. Cut that bolt. And then what's neat about this is it's already threaded in there, so when you unscrew it out, it aligns all the threads correctly. So that and actually the thread damage isn't much at all. I can actually see right where the lead for the screw would be. And so I've done this more than a few times with different screws, and there you go. So see, I went from, you know, a screw that was way too long to basically cutting it in half, and now I can screw that into that sub foot and actually make contact with the counter bore there and have it appropriately set. So yeah, if you have electrical tools, you may actually have one of these sitting around, and has different sizes here to be able to cut different screws. Okay, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe, like, and share.